Right, welcome to You Can Do It Maths, and we're doing the May-June 2021 paper 23. Let's go do it. Question 1, don't overthink this. Write down the number that is 23 less than minus 1.6. That means minus 1.6. 23 less than that, you need to subtract 23 from that. Okay, don't waste your time. Just go and hammer it into your calculator. Save your brain power for more important stuff. Negative 24.6. Question 2a, write as a fraction in its simplest form. Now, percentage, per cientos, we know that means out of 100. Simplest form, once again, don't waste your time. You got a calculator, use it. Save your time and efforts for something harder. Simplest form, 18/25. Your calculator, let your calculator do the work for you. Question 2b, we know place value, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So 0.004 is 4 out of 1,000. Again, let your calculator do all the thinking. 4 out of 1,000 equals 1/250. Okay. Press the SD button just to make sure. Yeah, you see, that is it. It's all possible on the calculator. Question 3, the moment you see parallel lines, you need to immediately think about alternate angles, the one that forms the Z, or corresponding angles, the one that forms the F, or co-interior angles, right, the one that forms the C. So here we got obvious, if we mark angle X and the 40 degrees, what we got that F. Do not write F angles. You need to write corresponding. That is the only correct answer here. Okay, the F helps us identify the angle. Corresponding is what you're looking for. Do not write alternate angles. Do not write interior angles. Do not write parallel lines. Do not write allied angles. Those are things the students did in the exam. Corresponding, and it's correct. Question 4, these are angles around the point. So they need to add up to 360. So if we were to write an equation, that will be 360 minus 100, which tells us the remaining two angles is 260 degrees. Because they are both y, it means they are the same size. So all that's left to be done is divide that by 2, which will give us, what's that, 130 degrees. Question 5, Joe invests $600 for 7 years at the rate of 1.5% per year. Simple interest, that is very important. So remember this formula. Interest, simple interest in this case, is P times R times T. Oh my goodness. Times T divided by 100. Okay. I being the interest, this is only the extra money that you earn. P being the principal, the original amount you put in the bank. R being the rate, the percentage, and T obviously stands for time. So in this case, the interest that Joe will earn, the principal, the P is the $600 he puts in the bank. The R is a rate, which is 1.5. He's leaving it there for 7 years, and divide that by 100. Okay, that's easy to put into your calculator, and bam, we got the answer. Okay, $63. Thanks. Does this make sense? Okay, interest means just the extra money the bank gives you for investing your money there. That is not the total amount he has in the bank. The total amount, of course, would be 663, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking for just the interest. Question 6. When I read these questions, it is very confusing for me. So what I like to do is I like to just put some numbers in there so things becomes real. So the miss says Maria buys n pencils. Make up a number. Let's say she buys, let's say 8 pencils, and the pencils cost p cents each. Let's say they cost 50 cents each. All right. She pays with a, let's say she pays with a $10 note. Okay. How would we work out the amount of change she gets. So first, what we'll do is we'll do 8 times 50 to work out how much she has to pay. That, of course, will be 400 cents she'll have to pay. Okay. She pays with a $10 note. We have to give her answer in cents. So if we have to change dollars to cents, we're going to have to multiply it by 100. So that means we multiply 10 times 100. Means she got 1,000. She's paying with 1,000 cents. Okay. And to find the change, we're going to have to subtract, meaning she's going to get 600 cents change or $6 change. Right. Now we got the numbers. Now we can change this for letters. Here we had the $10 note. That 10 is a Y. So we change that for a Y. Y times 100 is 100Y. The 8 was the number of pencils. So let's make that was the N. And P is the cents. So that's minus NP. And that's the answer. 100Y minus NP. Question 7. A cube number. Be careful. 49 is not a cube number. 7, that's a square number. Cube number means if we do cube root and slot the number in, we get a whole number answer, because 5 cubed is 125. So the cube number is 125. Prime number, careful. Remember, prime numbers has only got 2 factors. 1 and the number itself. Yeah, so obviously 12 can be divided by 3 and 4 and 6. 18 by 2 and 3 and 6. Okay. 125 can be divided by 5. 91 is very tempting, but that's not a prime number because you can divide it by 7. Okay, 91 divided by 7. See, that means it's not, and you can divide by 13. So the only option here is 29. 29 can only be divided by 1 and 29. Question 8. Don't get confused here. Write things down. 1 pound equals $1.1723. What do we have? Not dollars, euros. We have euros. So let's write that underneath on the euro side. So doing this like a ratio, the question is, how do we get from there to there? We do the opposite. We divide 190 by 1.1723. Okay, massive number there. So that means we multiply by 162.0745, etc. Which means we do it on the same on the other side. Okay, to get the answer here. So that is our answer, because 1 times 162.074 is the correct answer. Just read your question carefully. Always go through it again. Give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. In the examiner reports, you won't believe how many people lose marks because they don't answer the question as required. So it's 162 point, cut it off there. That's a 4, so it stays a 7. And you've got it. Question 9, without using a calculator, simply means if you want to gonna take your calculator and type in the question into your calculator. If you press shift and the fraction button, you can put in mixed fractions, by the way. Okay, if you were to do this in the exam and write the answer there, you get 0 marks because it's obvious you used a calculator. What is important here is you're working everything that goes in between. Okay, so the first step that you have to show is where you change the mixed fractions to improper fractions, right? So first, 1 and 2/3. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5. That is 5/3. If you get stressed and you forget it, you can put 1 and 2/3 in your calculator, press the equal button, and it does it for you. Okay, nobody's going to check if you use your calculator there. Next one, 7.5. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15. Once again, you can double check it on your calculator. 15/2. Then remember, when we divide we need to invert the second fraction. So 15 over 2 becomes 2 over 15. And multiply. Okay, there are two ways you can go from here. You can do the straightforward multiplication. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 15 is 45. Or you can simplify before you multiply, which means divide this by 5 is 1. Divide this by 5 is 3. Okay, 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9. You got the answer straight away there. Okay, if you went the other way, 10 over 45. Simplify that. The calculator does it for you. You get the answer. Now that we got everything in between, now our final answer will count for something. So you'll get a mark for changing the mixed fractions into improper fractions. You get a mark for multiplying either way across. And once you get those 2 marks, you'll get your final mark for 2 over 9. Question 10. Ask for a piece of tracing paper. If you don't have one in the exam, trace that triangle. And remember, now we're doing triangle T, so don't get confused. We start with triangle T. There it is. Now, what is the transformation from T to A? Well, it doesn't change size, so it's not enlargement. It doesn't rotate in any way. And it doesn't flip over. It's not symmetrical. So there's only one thing, and that is a translation. Okay, so write translation. Do not write transformation. Do not write translocation. Do not write transition. These are all wrong, and these are things students actually write. Translation is the only correct answer there. Translation. And that will give us one of the 2 marks. To get full marks, we need to write the vector. Now remember, a vector, it's got 2 numbers. Okay, the number at the top tells us left and right. The number at the bottom tells us how much up and down. Of course, to the right is positive, to the left is negative, up is positive, down is negative. And never put a line in between. It's not a fraction. Okay, so to get from T to A, we move 1 square to the left. So that would be minus 1. And let's count them. How many squares down? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 squares down. That's minus 8. Don't put a line. It's not a fraction. And you get full marks. Question 10b. Draw the image of triangle T after enlargement of scale factor minus a half. Center 0, 0. Okay. First of all, a half means our new triangle is going to be half the size. Just to give us a rough idea. Instead of two squares high, it will be 1 square high. And instead of 6 squares across, it will be 3 squares across. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. Not there, somewhere else. Okay. To know where to draw it, we need to look at the center. There's the center. Okay. Then there is the minus. Okay, if it was just a half, over there would have been the answer, right there. But it's a minus half. It's on the opposite side of the center. So it's going to be over here somewhere. All right, so triangle half the size over here on the opposite side of the center of enlargement. To help us, we draw some guidelines. Okay, do draw them as accurately as possible. So let's start with this top corner here. To get from this corner to the center is 4 squares down and 2 squares across. So on the opposite side of the center, I'm going to half everything. Instead of going 4 down, I go 2 down. Instead of going 2 across, I go 1 across, and I'm on that guideline there. So that point is correct. Let's do the right angle next. Draw a perfect diagonal line there. Okay, to get from the right angle to the center, 2 squares down, 2 squares across. That becomes 1 square down, 1 across. And again, I'm on that line to guide me. And that distance of 2 squares has now become 1 square. So we know things is going right. Okay, last point is this one here. Let's draw another line just to help guide us. Okay, and here it is 2 squares down and 8 squares across. So on the opposite side from the center, instead of going 2 down, I go 1 down. Instead of going 8 across, I now go 4 across. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it. That looks correct to me, because the triangle is half the size, and because it's negative, it's on the opposite side there, and we get our marks. Question 11, simplify. This one is straightforward. First, 3 times 4 obviously is 12, and then the x cubed times the x to the power of 4. Remember the first rule of indices: when we apply multiplying with indices and the base numbers are the same, we need to add the indices, not multiply. So that's x to the power of 7. Question 12. Read carefully, write the answer correctly. Right, x is an integer, which means it's a whole number, nothing in between. 2, 3, 4, 5, not 2.5, 2.1, nothing. Okay, something in between. So we need to find the values of x. Treat this like a normal equation. We want to get that x alone. Okay, we want x, and then we'll know what x is between. Right, so first thing we do is we add 1, and we add 1 on both sides. We add 1 to everything. So minus 1 plus 1 will leave us just with 2x. On the right hand side, 3 plus 1 will leave us with 4. And on the left hand side, minus 3 plus 1 leaves us with minus 2. Next thing is to get rid of that 2 in front of the x. To do that, we divide by 2. Divide everywhere by 2. So that will get us here where we want to be. 2 divided by 2 just 1x. 4 divided by 2 obviously is 2. And minus 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So what is the values of x? It can be minus 1, yes, because it is bigger or equal to minus 1. It can be 0, and it can be 1. Can't be 2 because that is less than 2 and not equal. And those are the only correct answers. Question 13, expand and simplify. 6 times t is 6t. 6 times minus q is minus 6q. And this is where the mistake comes in, that negative 2. Negative 2 times t is negative 2t. And look very carefully. Minus 2 times minus 2, 2 negatives makes a positive. 2 times 3 is 6q. That right there, that is where everybody makes their mistake. Okay, simplify now. We've done the expand. Now we simplify. 6t minus 2t will give us 4t. And negative 6q plus 6q. These two will cancel each other out, which means it's 0. So we're left with just 4t. Question 14, magnitude of a vector. Magnitude means how big is the vector, how long is that line. Let's look at what this actually means. And I've got it here. There we go. Right, so we're looking here. I've already started there. Imagine we start on the left hand side, and the vector means we are moving. The 20 there means we are moving 20 spaces to the right. So that means we know that my vector in this direction is 20. Then we've got a k, which means that we are moving down with our vector, but we don't know how far. So we don't know what this length is here. Okay, that is a question mark. Okay, what we have done normally is then to determine the vector, which will go like this. That's a right angle triangle. We will use Pythagoras. Now we know what the actual magnitude, the length of the vector is. That is 29. So we know that this is 29. Okay. Meaning, okay, that we're doing Pythagoras. 29 squared, or just 29, equals the square root of the other two sides there, which is the one we have is 20 squared and k squared. So it's basic Pythagoras. Okay, so we're moving backwards. That square root should be squared. So we square it on the other side. Then we subtract the 20 squared. And to get rid of that square, we square root the answer. Okay. Now, just one more thing. We move down. You see, I moved down here, assuming that that k would actually be negative, but we might as well have gone upwards. So it could be positive as well. Okay, so there is actually two answers. There's a positive and a negative. K could be any two of those. But anyway, let's put that in our calculator. Square root 29 squared minus 20 squared gives me k equals 21. If you want to be thorough, flip the plus and the minus. I see on the mark scheme the plus and the minus is in brackets. It means if you don't put the plus and the minus, you won't lose marks. You still get full marks for just writing 21. Question 15a. Let's start with A. And let's look at this triangle, this shape, okay? We got these two parallel sides, so that means we got lots of alternate angles. That means angle ABC, this one here, is alternate with that one. So these two angles are the same. And angle BAD is alternate with angle ADC. So these two are the same. And lastly, angle AXB, let's make that a dot, is vertically opposite to angle CXD. So these two angles are the same. Okay, that gives us two triangles with the same angles, but they're obviously not the same size. So they're not congruent. Congruent means they are the same size. They are not an enlargement because we're not doing transformations now. We're doing something else. They are similar. Okay, and that is the only correct answer here, similar. Okay, then it says work out the length of BX. So BX is over here. Now look at me. BX is the length between the red dot and the blue angle. Okay, so the corresponding side here is between the red dot and the blue angle on the bigger triangle. Okay, not the 7. It's kind of the top triangle is twisted, swapped around because the angles is the other way around. So the correct working out here will be to write the ratio of BX over CX is same because similar triangles, the ratios are the same as AB, which is 6 over CD, which is 12. What we're actually saying is BX over 8 is AB over CD is 6 over 12, which is a half. So in the end, I'm sure you can see that the smaller triangle is half the size of the bigger one. Or if you want to write it differently, it's 8 times 6 over 12. So 8 times half is 4 centimeters. Okay. Question 15c. The area of triangle DCX is 26.906 centimeters squared. Let's write it down, right? DCX is this big triangle here, and the area is 26.906 centimeters squared. Units are important. Find the area of triangle ABX. ABX is the one at the top, so we want to know what is the area there in centimeters squared. Okay, let's make the area X. That's what we want to know. Okay, let's write that down. So remember, similar triangles all about ratio. So that is X centimeters squared over 26.906 centimeters squared. Now that ratio would be the same as the ratios of the sides, or will it? Okay, the ones we have here is 6 centimeters for AB and 12 centimeters CD. So these are the corresponding sides. We wrote the X at the top, so we write the 6 at the top. So that should be 6 centimeters over 12 centimeters. Okay, the big thing to notice here is the units are not the same. On the left, we got centimeter square. On the right, we got centimeters. That means our scale factor changes. It means we need to square the scale factor as well. If you write it like this, it becomes very clear. Okay, so that means to find out what is x, we need to multiply 26.906 at the other side. Remember, the centimeter square doesn't mean we square the 26.906. It only indicates the units. But here we need to square it. Okay, so we need to square 6 over 12, or a half. A half is the scale factor. Square a half. Okay, so on the calculator, 26.906 times bracket 6 over 12, or a half, squared, and that will give us the right answer of 6.7265. Correct to three significant figures, 6.73. Okay. 15C part 2, triangle ACX. Now this only counts 1 mark, so we don't want to break our heads over this, okay? But let's have a look. They're asking for us to tell for 1 mark, what is the area of this triangle here. Okay, so what I want us to notice here is the following. Okay, remember, area of a triangle is half base times perpendicular height. We have the area of this triangle here, AXB. Okay, in these two triangles, they have the same height. If we were to draw that, it's the height, the perpendicular height. Okay, that is the same for both triangles. Okay, what else we know here is that the base of this triangle is 8, and the base of this triangle, if you remember before, is 4. Okay, so that means the height is the same, but the base and the smaller triangle is half. So that simply means that the area of the bigger triangle, because the base is double, the area is going to be double, and that's easy as that. So whatever you need to do, you need to take your answer from the previous question, take the unrounded one, 6.7265, and simply times it by 2. Okay, which gives us 13.453 to three significant figures, 13.4. No, not 13.4. Don't lose a mark for silly rounding. Okay, if we cut it off there, that's a 5. That is 13.5. Silly. Question 16. The sides of a regular hexagon are 80 millimeters. Let's draw ourselves a little hexagon. Hexagon, remember, has got 6 sides. Okay, think B's. All right. Correct to the nearest millimeter. The moment you said that correct to the nearest, you know we're working with bounds. Nearest millimeter means the nearest 1 millimeter. So we need to take that 1 divided by 2, we get 0.5. That is what we need to add and subtract to the value to get the upper and the lower bounds. Meaning, if we got 80 millimeters, correct to the nearest millimeter. For the lower bound, we need to subtract 0.5. That will give us 79.5 millimeters. And the upper bound would be plus 0.5. That would be 80.5 millimeters. Okay. That's not the answer though. They want us to calculate the perimeter. Remember, perimeter is the outside of a shape. So that means the lowest possible value for each side of our hexagon is 79.5. And how many sides is that? 6. So we need to do 79.5, add it together 6 times, or rather 6 times 79.5, which we hammer into our calculator. Okay, and that gives us 477 millimeters. Question 17. the interior angle of a regular polygon. Now remember, a regular polygon, it's got many sides. We don't know. So let's draw this. This is part of a regular polygon. It continues. The interior angle is 175. Okay, that's the interior angle. Okay, but we can work out the exterior angle by doing 180 minus 175. That gives us an exterior angle of 5 degrees. Why is it helpful to know the exterior angle? Because we know that the exterior angle of any polygon always adds up to 360 degrees. So if we divide the size of the exterior angle into that, we get the number of sides, which is 72. Question 18. A car starts from rest and accelerates at a rate of 3 meters per second square for 4 seconds. So that is this line here. That's the acceleration where we go up. Okay. The car travels at a constant speed for 10 seconds. So this is when it travels at a constant speed for 10 seconds. Right. Oh my goodness. Right. Find the value of v. So that is the value of v there in meters per second. So we need to remember that the acceleration is the gradient of this line. And remember, gradient is the change in y over the change in x. Okay, so that means 3 meters per second square is the change in y, which is what we want to know. Okay, so actually y would be the same as the value v over x, change in x, which that is 4 seconds. Okay, and that is just 4 seconds. So our calculation is 3 meters per second squared times 4 seconds gives us 12. Okay, and the units are helpful here because if we multiply seconds squared with seconds, that's the denominator, that will cancel with that. We're left with meters per second, which is what we're looking for. Okay, so that means we know there the value there is 12. Okay, and also we know the height here is 12, and that is 4. Question 18b, calculate the total distance traveled by the car during the 14 seconds. Now on a speed time graph, the distance traveled is the area underneath the graph. Okay, the mark scheme, they like to do this using the area of a trapezium, but I will do it the way that most students in the exam did it. They worked out the area of the triangle. Okay, and the area of a triangle is half base, which in this case is 4, times the perpendicular height, which is 12. Okay, don't forget the half, it's a triangle. Then we've got a rectangle. We need to add the area of this rectangle to that. Okay, the height of a rectangle is 12, and the length is not 14. Okay, not, because the rectangle starts here at 4. So from 4 to 14 is 10. That's a very common mistake as well. Okay, so let's hammer that in. A half, 4 times 12 plus 12 times 10. We know that's 120. Okay, which gives us the right answer, 144 meters. Question 19a, circle theorems always read all the information carefully. PQT are points on a circle. Yeah, we can see that. ATB is a tangent to the circle at T. So immediately we think about the circle theorems that involves tangents. Okay, first one that comes to mind is the angle between a tangent and a radius is 90 degrees. Do we have a radius here? No, QT is not a radius. Okay, nothing, I've got any lines coming from the center of the circle. So the other circle theorem that involves a tangent is the alternate segment theorem. Okay, which is angles in alternate segments are equal, meaning on our sketch here, angle ATP, which is 50, is equal to the alternate segment, the alternate angle over there, PQT is 50 then. Okay, That is what we can deduct from that. Okay. Another piece of information there is that this is an isosceles triangle, meaning the base angles are the same. So that one is 50. So all we got left to do now is do angles in a triangle, 180 minus 32 50-degree angles, which is 100, which gives us an easy TPQ is 80 degrees. Question 19b. Okay, read the information. The diagram shows a cyclic quadrilateral. What did we know about a cyclic quadrilateral? Is that the opposite angles equals to 180. Find the value of x and w. Let's start with w. Right, first, this 68 angles on a straight line. So if I do 180 minus 68, that would be 112. I know that angle there is 112. Opposite angles and a cyclic quadrilateral equals 180. So we're just going back where we started. We subtracted. That gives us W is 68. Okay, we're going around in circles. Okay, same thing we can do to find x. We know that these two angles, if we add them together, 2x plus 3x, they should equal 180. Now we got a basic equation we can solve. Add the x's together, that gives us 5x. Divide the 5. So 180 divided by 5 is 36. Question 20 is a matter of place value. They want you to see if you notice that if there is a -1, that this number shifts to the right. It becomes smaller. So meaning if we have to write it like this, if we want to get the same index, we need to shift this number 1 to the left. That will give us 0.21 times 10 to the p, which we add 1 to the index. And now we can add them together. So that will be 2.31 times 10 to the power of p. If that is confusing, let's pick a value for p. Pick any value. Let's make p 5. Okay. Now your calculator, you can do indices of a standard form by changing the settings. If you press Shift, Setup, change the number format. So we press 3. We now want scientific notations. In other words, for standard form, we press 2. Select the number from 0 to 9. Let's make it 4. It will give us the 4 significant figures, the answer. Okay, so now we can actually put that into our calculator. 2.1, press the times 10x button at the bottom. We decided p is 5, so we put in 5 plus 2.1. And remember, if p is 5, then p minus 1 is now 4. Press the equal button, and there we go. We got 2.31, ignore the 0, times 10 to the power of 5, which we said was p, and that is the same answer. Question 21, the shortest distance from B to AC. AC is a line. Okay, so it's not from B to A. It's from B to AC, the line. You need to recognize that that would be a perpendicular line like this. That is the shortest possible distance. And then we have a 90-degree angle. Okay. That distance is 12.8 centimeters. Okay. Calculate BC. That's what we need to know. So when we have a right angle triangle and we're working triangles, which means trigonometry, we either do Pythagoras or SOHCAHTOA. Which one is it this time? Yes, it's SOHCAHTOA. Pythagoras only deals with the length of the sides. SOHCAHTOA is when we combine angles and side lengths. So let's label the sides. BC is opposite the 90-degree angle, so that's the hypotenuse. and the 12.8 is opposite my angle, so we label that the opposite side. So we're working with the opposite and the hypotenuse, the O and the H, which means we use the sine ratio. So let's write that down. Sine 65 equals, the O is first, so the opposite, 12.8 over what we want to know, BC. So to calculate this, get rid of the fraction there, multiply the BC on the other side, and then we're going to have to divide the sin 65 there. So we basically swap them around. So that means we got BC equals 12.8 over sin 65. Not sin to the power of -1, as we move the whole sin and 65 gets divided. Okay, so on our calculator, it's going to look like this. 12.8 over sin 65 equals, and we get the answer 14.123. That's nice. 23. Okay. Rounded, of course, to 3 significant figures is 14.1. Question 22. Read carefully that first sentence. Z is inversely proportional to the square root of y minus 2. Let's put that into mathematical language. Z is in proportion. Okay, it is inverse, so it's 1 over the square of y minus 2. Okay, students that get this wrong, they leave out information. They leave out the inverse or they leave out the square. Okay, now we can change this to an equation by bringing in the constant k. All right, now that we've got an equation, we can substitute the values we have. Y is 5 and Z is 9 into that equation. So Z is 9 and Y is 5. Okay, that will give me K. 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. So let's write that down. So 9 equals 3 squared. 3 squared is 9. We multiply the 9 on the other side. That will become 9 times 9. So that means K is 81. We're not there yet. We're about 1 mark in. Okay. We need to write an equation. And the equation we have is here. This is the one we need to write down with the Z equals. Okay. Only thing now is we can substitute in the 81. So final answer 81 over y minus 2 squared. Question 23. A triangle has sides length 11, 10, and 9 centimeters. Calculate the largest angle in the triangle. Right. If this is confusing, do something crazy like I'm going to do. Construct a triangle. Okay. If you practice this, then you should be quick. Okay. Now, it says calculate. So you cannot do what I'm doing and get the marks. Okay. But what I'm doing is just to give clarity of what we're doing. So that's 11 centimeters. There's another side that is 10 centimeters. So if I open my compass 10 centimeters there, put the sharp end over here, make an arc. Okay, then open my compass for the last side, 9 centimeters. Hammer it in there, put another arc. It doesn't quite fit. Okay, connect the sides. There we have the exact triangle. Okay, this is 9 and this is 10. Okay, or just make a rough sketch, because what does this help? This helps us to identify the biggest angle. Where would the biggest angle be? Let's have a look. This one is roughly 50. This one is roughly 60. So yeah, this one over here, the biggest one is 70. So our answer should be around about 70 degrees, but we need to calculate it. Okay, so let's do that then. Let's calculate it. Okay, so here goes. What do we have? Okay, technically, we're not supposed to have these angles, right? We have three sides, and we want to find an angle. Okay, this is trigonometry. So we can use Pythagoras, SOHCAHTOA. If there was a right angle, there isn't. So this is the sine or the cosine rule. Okay, the sine or the cosine rule. The sine rule, we need opposites. We need an angle and the opposite side, at least one of those, and that we don't have. Okay, technically we don't have any angles, we just have the sides. That's when we're going to use the cosine rule, when we have just the sides. Okay, we have just the sides. We can use the alternate version. You can memorize this, or you can use this formula and just rearrange as things go along. I think using this will be quicker. Okay, so the formula we need to use is, let's move up. Okay, cos A equals B squared plus C squared minus A squared equal to BC. Okay, now again, we need to be careful about how we label our triangle. Okay, cos A, that will be the angle we want to know. So the angle I want to know is the biggest one. We're going to label that A, which means the opposite side is the smaller A. And then for the B and the C, it doesn't matter. You can have it either way around. Okay, it's just important to note that the angle I want is the opposite side there. In this case, we can clearly see that the biggest angle is opposite the longer side. Okay, so that means cos A, the angle we want, is B, in my case is 10 squared, and C, which is 9 squared. Again, you can swap them around, 9 squared plus 10 squared. What is important is that you need to have A correct, which is 11 squared. A has to be 11. Okay, and then again, 2BC is 10 times 9, or 9 times 10. Okay, if we want to do this all in one calculation, move the cos to the other side, so that is cos to the power of minus 1. And then we have all of that again. So on our calculator, it's going to look like this. Okay, shift cos minus 1, fraction 10 square plus 9 square minus 11 square, down arrow 2 times 10 times 9, use the side arrow, close the bracket, equal, and let's look at that answer we got. Okay, 70.528, etc., rounded to 1 decimal place, as this is degrees, 70.5. Okay, what did we measure? 70. Okay, so drawing a diagram helps you to get things clear, but to get your marks, you need to do the actual calculation. Question 24. If you can memorize how these graphs look like, brilliant. If you sit in the exam and you've forgotten, use your calculator. Right. We can always find where a line crosses the y and the x-axis by making the y 0 or the x 0. So let me show you what I'm telling you, right? First, let's make that x 0. That will tell us where we cross the y-axis. So that means 2 divided by 0. Calculator, 2 divided by 0, math error. Okay, what does it tell us? Of course, we cannot divide anything by 0. That also tells us that my graph should never cross the y-axis. That is an asymptote. Okay, let's do the same here. Let's make y 0. That will give me 0 equals 2 times x. Multiply the x on the other side. Anything times 0 is 0. That gives us the answer of 0 equals 2. That's another math error. Impossible. That's not correct. That tells us my graph can never cross the x-axis. Okay, or the y-axis. The x-axis. Okay, that's another asymptote. So no, don't cross the axis. Don't touch them. Don't cross them. Don't come. Yeah, get near them. Don't cross them. So what's our graph going to look like? So let's pick some other values. Right, let's make x 1. Okay, so if x is 1, y is 2. So imagine if x is 1, y is 2. Let's make x 2. So if x is 2, y is 1. Okay. So as you continue this, you will see if we make x a very big number, if we make x 100, that will give us y is 1/50th. So if x is 100, that just means we get very close, but y becomes very small as x becomes bigger, and it will be the opposite side way around. Okay, so this should by now make you refresh your memory, remember what it looks like. This graph is a line that approaches the x-axis but never cross it. Okay, use a pencil and a ruler to draw this accurately. Don't ever curl back. You see that? Curling back is wrong. Touching or crossing the line is wrong. So that will cost you a mark. That will cost you a mark. Okay, what we want is a smooth curve that approaches the y-axis but never touches it, and approaches the x-axis but never touches it. Okay, is that it? What about negative values? What about if what are we going to? X is -1, then y would be -2. What about if y is -1? If y is -1, then x would be -2. Okay, it repeats the pattern, but just the negatives. Meaning on the opposite side, you need the same curve, a line that approaches the y-axis but doesn't cross it, and approaches the x-axis but doesn't cross it. Okay. Make sure everything is 100% correct to get full marks. Question B, we can do the same thing. Okay, let's make the x 0. That gives us y 2 to the power of -0, which is just 2 to the power of 0. Remember what that is? 1. Okay, so that tells us my graph is going... That's my dog. Stop barking, Cheetah. My graph is going to cross the y-axis at 1. Okay. Making y 0, oh, that complicates things. Okay. Meaning, again, we got an asymptote, which means we approach the x-axis but never cross it. Okay. Then pick other values for x. Let's see what x equals 1. What would that be? 2 to the power of -1. That gives us y equals 1/2. Okay, so that would be a smaller value. Let's pick a bigger value. Let's say x equals 5. What is that? So if x equals 5, that gives us 1/32. Okay, so as you see, as we go again closer to the x-axis, that graph is going to get closer and closer, but it's not going to touch it. Okay, let's pick a fraction. Or a negative, sorry, a negative. Okay, so if notice x is -1, so that would be two negatives. What do we get? It becomes positive. So as that is actually 2. As the x becomes negative, the y becomes positive, becomes bigger. Okay, and we can continue to play around. By now, you should recognize the pattern. So again, it's a smooth curve going down, approaching the x-axis, but not touching it. Okay, use a pencil and a ruler, get it right. Question 25. Find the x-coordinates of the points on the graph of y equals x to the power of 5 minus 5x to the power of 4, where the gradient is 0. So when we're talking about the gradient on a curve, we want to find at a specific point differentiation. We have to differentiate this. So that's first step. dy over dx. Okay, that's the gradient. Differentiating, imagine there's 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract 1 from that 5, that is 4. 4 times minus 5 is minus 20. Subtract 1 from that 4, that is 3. Okay, that's the equation that will give us the gradient. That means that's equal, since they tell us the gradient is 0 to 0. Okay, that's also the turning point, by the way. Okay, so now we just need to solve this. First thing we can do is factorize. There's a common factor here of 5, so we're going to put that in front of the bracket, and we can take an x cubed from both of these. So that will be x cubed. So in the bracket, 5x cubed times x will give me x to the power of 4. 5 times minus 4 will give me 20. And that's it. Yes. Okay. Double check. Yeah. 5x cubed times x is 5x to the power of 4. And 5x cubed minus 4 is minus 20x cubed. Brilliant. Okay. Now, both those parts is equal to 0. So that's 5x cubed equal to 0. Let's divide the 5. Yes, you can divide by 0 by 5. That is 0. And then we find the cube root of 0. So what times what times what is 0? 0. Brilliant. We got x equals 0. Okay. The other part, x minus 4 equals 0. That means x equals 4. Okay. And that's our answer. One x coordinate is 0. The other x coordinate is 4. And we've done it. Question 26. Reading the examiner's report, the students that was most successful got full marks is the ones that draw a tree diagram. So let's do that. Right. Molak goes to the shop every day. He sometimes goes in the mornings. So let's write that down. And sometimes he sleeps late and then he goes later. They tell us when he goes in the morning, the probability that there's bread is 0.7. And now remember, this has to add up to 1 because he gets bread or he doesn't. So the probability that there's bread when he goes later is 0.3. Okay, in the mornings, when he gets there, there is bread or there's no bread. Okay, the probability that there is bread is 0.95. Okay, which means the probability there's no bread is 0.05, but that's not that important at this stage. Okay, if he goes later, the probability that there's bread is 0.6. Okay, that means no bread is 0.4. But again, this is not really relative because we need to see what is the probability that there is bread. So there is two things that can happen. He goes in the mornings and he buys bread, or he goes later and he buys bread. That's the two pathways we are going to follow. Okay, so let's start with that. If he goes in the mornings, 0.7, the probability goes in the mornings, and that the bread is 0.95. Okay, that and that has to happen. He has to go in the morning, and there has to be bread. That is the AND rule. The AND rule states that we multiply. That's why I'm multiplying. Okay. Then the other thing that can happen, let's work that out quickly. 0.7 times 0.95, 0.665. The other thing that can happen is he goes later and there is bread. That will be 0.18. Okay, so there are two possible outcomes, favorable outcomes. Okay, two probabilities. Now, not both of these things is not going to happen. He's not going to go in the morning and later. He only goes once in the day. So it's the one or the other one is happening. And when it's the or rule, we add, meaning we need to add the 0.665 and the 0.18. And that will give us the final answer, which is 0.845. or 84.5% or some crazy fraction. Leave it as decimals since the whole question is in decimals, and you've done it. Well done. That's it. Whole paper done. Hope you found this useful. Please like and subscribe. See you later.